Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video is pretty crappy news from my personal farm. A huge change just happened, just took effect, and it's gonna affect my entire mine as a whole. We're gonna talk about what happened, what caused it, what's going on, and what we're gonna do about it, right? So if that sounds good guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So, pretty crappy news on a personal front here from my own personal mine. So, it's something that eventually figured was going to happen, something that would dread when it would happen. Luckily, the timing isn't the worst, but it is definitely going to change things here going forward for me especially. Okay, so for you guys who are newer, if you're considering getting into mining and like, oh, what's going on? The number one biggest factor above everything else, especially considering heavier duty mining, right, ASICs and such, is your electric rate. That is everything. That is going to change everything. And that's really going to tell you right off the bat if it's worth it to mine, period. Before you even go any further, that is the number one thing you want to look at, right? So when you go on a little calculator, go like Mining Now or whatever you're going to use, put in your current electric rate, your full electric rate, right? Make sure you understand your bill and how it works, because a lot of them are kind of confusing. Because a lot of times it's not just one flat rate. There's multiple different rates, multiple different charges. Make sure you have that final sum, and then kind of go from there. So something I had been dreading for quite a while. I knew it's going to happen, right? It's going to be a yearly thing where those electric rates go up, right? So far, even with the recent increases the past few years, it was still low enough where it didn't affect me. I also had a different rate with my electric company just because of that usage. Well, it was kind of a double whammy because it went up and they got rid of my previous discount, right? So that is no longer going to be a thing for sure, which apparently it wasn't supposed to be a thing for a while, but it just stayed on. But now it is fully gone and it is a game changer. So I'm going from about right under 11 cents. It went up to like 10.8 cents a kilowatt hour to 14. Okay, which when you think about that, oh, it doesn't sound like that big of a difference. That is massive. In crypto mining, it is a massive, massive difference and can wildly change things from being break even or better, slightly profitable, to being at a pretty massive loss. Okay. So let's go through how it's going to affect me, how things are looking. So the GPUs, right, which they've been on for quite a while, haven't been crazy profitable. They've been break even or better, which is, again, the goal, right? This is another thing you have to come up with your strategy. If you're a person who's going to be mining for profit, meaning you're going to mine at some time during the month, you're going to be selling some of your coins to pay off the electric. If you're only break even, you might as well just be buying the coin, right? So for me, my specific strategy, as long as I'm break even or better, I'm good with it, because to me, I just view mining as a form of DCAing or ECAing, which is like electric cost averaging, essentially just using the electric to DCA into the market, right? Which for me, it works great. And in general, it is a good strategy because of the tax benefits here, right? That's the main reason that is our threshold, right? Because a lot of people always ask like, oh, why are you going to mine if you're going to make this amount of sense? Well, I mean, if you're going to throw that amount of money into the market anyway, at this point, you are getting a tax incentive because you're able to essentially write that electric off, right? So there are pros and cons to this, and that's why for a lot of us, that is our threshold. As long as we're break even or better and not at a loss, then we're good, right? But at the end of the day, for me personally, I don't mind at a loss, especially if it's going to be a consistent loss, right? Like if it's something where the price action happened, because of course it's crypto, things can swing wildly from 10 to 50% up and down pretty much every day. It has to be a loss where I feel like it's going to be consistent for that entire month. If it's a day or two, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but if I see the trend coming and I feel like it's going to be a month or more, then I'll unplug, right? Because at the end of the day, my goal is to get the most amount of coins for the least amount of fiat, right? So as we look at the GPUs, again, all I have left is a little 10 card rig. Currently on Ergo, which was what I've been on for quite a bit now, it would be losing about 60 cents a day, which again, for losing 60 cents a day, not that big of a deal, right? And again, it's electric based, it's not a whole lot of wattage. So these will probably remain on, right? The bigger losers here, and again, part of this factor is Also, what do I think is going to happen with the price action, right? If we were at a time where things were kind of getting bearish, we had bad news happening, and I think the price was going to go lower, then I probably would be unplugging. Right now, the current market is at a pretty big dip, so if you are looking pretty good right now, should be looking good considering what I'm expecting to happen these next 2 months, right? Typically, Q1 is typically a very bullish month, specifically February and March for alts. Maybe it plays out, maybe it doesn't, but considering how bad a lot of the alts are dumping right now, where the price point's at, and this is what it's making, I feel confident that it'll turn around in the next month or so, right? So, like for me, it's about 900 watts, so not the biggest deal in the world either on that front. So, these will likely remain on actually. The bigger ones are the ones where they were already kind of breaking, especially the ASICs. So the ASICs that were barely breaking even or that were kind of getting carried by some of the others, right? So like my strategy with the kaspa ASICs did get like the KS5, for example, and it was to kind of combine the hash rates as a whole and the wattage as a whole so that more efficient unit can kind of carry the other ones. So it still falls under the category of being break even or better, which it was the case, right? So with the KS3M, KS5L, and the KS5, combining all the stats, it was still doing break even or better, so I was okay with having them on. Now, at this electric rate, a complete game changer. So like the KS3M, for example, now, it is losing damn near $8 a day, which is very, very hefty, right? Which is a massive, massive difference. So this guy, for sure, it's been got about 14 months out of it mining, and luckily, I know this is one a lot of people have had issues with. It's chugging along just fine, right? So it does kind of suck, but it is definitely time, right? This is where it does get kind of hard because you do get kind of like attached to these things. You want to see them, but at the end of the day, this is why you have to take emotions out. Look at the numbers, look at what makes more sense. And 100% what's going to make more sense here is unplugging this guy because it's probably going to be a long time for this guy to get profitable again. Okay, so just because it's at a loss right now doesn't mean it always will. As the price appreciates, things will change, but at this point, it needs to be very significant, right? Like kaspa has to be extremely up there for this thing to be profitable. Okay, because it's currently only yielding about 25 cas a day, and the electric is about $12 a day. Okay, so it's got to go up pretty massively. Let's do a quick little bit of math actually. Let's just ballpark it. Let's say it goes to, damn, I'd have to reach damn near 50 cents. So 25 times point. We're still at 50 cents. So it's going to be like around 45 cents or so, but that's what it's going to take for this thing to break even at this electric rate, right? So is it going to happen over time? Hopefully, potentially, but at my electric rate from home, it's going to be quite a while. It's definitely going to not be in the next month or two, right? Anything can happen, so maybe things do change, but wouldn't be as optimistic here. Okay, the KS5L also at a pretty good loss now, right? Going from being pretty much a little bit more than break even to at a pretty significant loss. Same deal, we're currently losing about $4.80 a day. This guy is yielding twice as much, though it's twice as efficient as the KS3M. And even with that, it's still not enough, right? So kind of the same deal here that this guy won't be break even until what? Until it's about like 23 to 25 cents, right? So this one has a higher likelihood of being break even or better in the next month or so. So there's that at least. But for now, I don't think it's going to hit it in the next 30 days. So this guy also is going to get the axe. Okay, so the KS5 is going to be the only one mining for me personally. My son does have his little KS2 Lite, so that thing's going to stay on. But as far as my farm goes, it's just going to be the KS5, which is going to be extremely shitty to see. My yield's getting cut in half, right? So, but again, at the end of the day, we have to run the numbers and see what makes most sense here, okay? Now, this is where some of the more efficient guys come into play and why we kind of diversified the way we did, right? So like the Jazzminer X16Q, not making a lot a day, but at least it's break even or better, right? So that guy chilling there behind me, that was kind of the reason we wanted some of these efficient at-home units. Same thing with like those AL0s. Again, they're not making a ton, but for those guys, for example, all four of them, 400 watts, it's still going to bring in yield, right? Same with this Jazzminer, it's still going to continue to bring in yield. versus the less efficient units, it's so inefficient that it doesn't make any sense, right? So instead of going all in into only these big units and then being in a position right now where I would have to unplug and not be bringing in anything, at least we're gaining some form of yield there, right? Which is also why we diversified into so many other things, and why we've mentioned that you need to like kind of plan ahead for these things. What are you going to do if that happens? Do you have any other forms of revenue? This is why I'm such a big proponent for like dpin and such, right? Between like the Helium Mobile, GeoNet, all the car ones, Demos, SwordChain, Hive Mapper, Rover, all the staking options. For example, that's why I love Solana, AVAX, because of the staking rewards. Believe it or not, it's been 2 years that I've had those things staked, and it's consistent revenue, right? It's like almost a Solana a freaking month. Just revenue, just from what? Staking these freaking coins. Okay, so that's why it's important to kind of prepare for the future, prepare for this potential scenario. Like for me, this is something we've talked about in the past and kind of already ready for it just for when it happened. Obviously, it sucks though, but it is what it is, and we want to continue to bring in yield. Okay, now as we go down the list of some of the other ASICs, this guy, the KA3, is actually still profitable. Again, it's just breaking even, but then again, that's the goal, right? And I still see good potential with Kadena, so this guy will probably remain on. Not probably, it definitely will remain on. The other big boy ASIC is the K7. So this guy is at a loss. It is losing about $1.40 a day, which in the grand scheme of things over the span of the month is about $45 that it would lose. Is it mega significant? No, but is it one that I probably am going to unplug though? Actually, probably, right? And this one, kind of a different reasoning for this one. A lot of it has to do with the current situation with the amount of yield you're getting, right? So this is the thing also, that this is going to be more of a personal bias, and for me it's just because I've already reached the allocation I wanted to get with this thing. Okay, so I do have specific goals for every coin. I want to get X amount minimally. Obviously, the more the merrier. But at this point, because of how much yield I'm getting now versus what it was back then, it just does not feel worth it, right? Especially not at a loss. If it was a slight profit, it would still be plugged in, but even though it's a slight loss, and realistically if it was a coin I still needed to get more coins with, probably would be remain plugged in. But in this specific case, let's give the example, right? So currently, if you were to buy a K7 right now, even if the price, so this is a thing where it's not even because of the fiat profitability, it literally just has to do with the yield, right? It's such a minimal amount of yield that even if the price does pump, this is going to be one of the first ones on the chopping block, just because I already got what I wanted to get, and the yield now in comparison to what it was before is so freaking tiny. Okay, let's look at it. So currently you would be yielding about 865 per day. Okay, so let's look at how much we have mined already. Again, this one is one we've been mining for about 2 years now. Currently, these past, 4 or 5 months, I've only been mining on 2 hash boards, just because that is broke boy low power mode, right? So essentially I've been prioritizing the kaspa ASICs in order to run multiples on that single 30 amp circuit, because right, those kaspa ASICs are what? About 3,500 watts. This guy down to 2 hash boards is about 1,800 watts. Therefore, a grand total of about 53 to 5,400 watts, and it allows me to run 2 of them on a single 30 amp, right? So it would be nice if there was actual low power mode, but been making it work that way, and just under the same guise as that I already had the amount that I wanted, just mining on it just to continue to run it. So again, let's look at how much we have mined totally these past 2 years, and this is where it kind of gets a little eye-opening, and why this is one I just wouldn't recommend now, just because of the yield difference. Again, in reality, it's more of a personal bias just because of how much we've already stacked, right? So when we look at it, again, I've been on 2 miners this entire time, and you can see how much we've stacked. So you can see here I've been running on the 2 boards, that's why I'm only getting about 40 terahash. So our current amount we have mined, this is 1.3 million coins. Okay, so this is about 2 years worth of it running. And not even the entire time. Again, the past while, it's been just on the 2 hash boards, right? A lot of it in reality was accrued that first year. Okay, let's look at the extent of things. So let's divide our 1.3 million divided by what you're currently yielding now, which is about 850. So again, if you were to get one now, and again, this is with the hash rate being reduced what it was not too long ago before that pump and everything going on, that's how many days it would take you to yield that same amount. Okay, it would take you 1,500 days to get to that amount. Okay, the reason is because, again, this is why it's important to pay attention to the tokenomics of whatever you're mining. So that's a big reason we got in when we did. We wanted to get in first batch. It's because of the halving. So there was a couple of different things. One was the halving, so we were able to get a solid year of mining for those of you guys who got it in the first batch prior to the halving, right? So that was already a massive difference. And then the other big thing was the hash rate. The hash rate went up pretty monumentally again after this unit came out, and especially after it pumped. Okay, initially, like, yes, it did go up a pretty good amount, but when it fully, because you can see here, this was the initial, it were about 80 petahash, and then when this guy did finally fully release, it brought it up to about 188. So it did, double from what it was prior, so that was a pretty big change, but then this is where we made the most of our yield during this whole year. Okay, this was pre-halving, hash rate didn't go through the roof, but then what happened when the price went up, because it did like a 8, what was it, like an 8 or 10x within a small amount of time, and then what happened, Bitmain did re-release or restock after restock because of the hyper on this thing. So we went from being in this 150 to 170 petahash range up to more than double, right? And that's about the range we've been in now. Okay, so because of the difference in yield, it's like I see how much I have already and how much it's yielding now, and it's like, why? Right? Although in terms of fiat profitability, because again, it's gone up so much that it's still not bad. But to me, this is why I'm saying it's more of a personal bias regarding that. Okay, so for me, chances are this thing may be unplugged unless things change. But as an overall goal, let's go to the next one. And this one's been unplugged for quite a while. Again, this is another one that we made our stack during that first year, right? Unfortunately, I did get mine. I had joked about it. This is one of those that got delayed, that I would get it not until the halving, and I literally did. I think I got it like either a few days or a week before the halving, which I lost out on like 2-3 months of pre-halving mining. But regardless, kind of the same scenario. I had a certain amount that I wanted to accrue. We did get to that goal pretty early, which was 100,000 coins. And again, kind of the same thing. Currently, you'd be yielding about 264 coins versus now to get 100,000, that would be, even just eyeballing it, if it's a 250, be about 400 days or so, right? So kind of the same scenario. Will this one eventually go up in price? Again, this is one that went down massively. This was probably the highest degen play that I made this bear market. And this one's also probably one that's not going to pan out, right? It has had pumps. I do feel confident that it'll at least be break even. Again, I could have sold recently. It did pump up a pretty good amount recently, actually. Probably should have sold. If I would have sold, I'd be reinvesting it right now. But I'm just going to hang on to it. We'll see what it does. If it's a dud, it's a dud. If it does well, it has a lot of room to grow, right? So we'll play that. And then just as a whole, the plan was pretty much to begin getting ready to sell sometime this spring anyway, right? So all this is kind of doing is just kind of speeding up that process a bit, right? So, because ideally now, the reason I said spring, realistically the goal was March. March, April was the timeline, because at that point it would be 2 full years of essentially mining this entire time, paying out of pocket, which has been rough, not gonna lie, right? But again, we're focused on yield, we're looking at it. And I'm saying it's been rough just paying that amount, not really taking any profits, but in reality, it's been extremely lucrative already. Even if this were to be the top, it's been extremely lucrative, which has me extremely bullish, right? So luckily, things did work out the way they did, right? For example, the K7, the KA3, they are still, even 2 years later, just about, they are still the best in class ASICs, right? So the other big thing is that chances are they're going to get replacements here pretty soon. How significant they're going to be, are they going to happen? We don't know, right? But at this point, that was going to be the cutoff for essentially me to really start consolidating and start either going to a next gen or to sell, hang on to those coins and either reinvest, look for other hardware, and this is part of the plan, right? And this also just changes the mindset quite a bit now also, right? Because realistically, from here going forward, because guess what? The electro rates go up, they're not really going to go back down. Okay, so we've already had what to do in mind here. And even in the short term, it does kind of change things, right? Because now ideally, I don't really want to have too many at-home ASICs with this electric rate. So going forward, probably going to be hosting, especially some of these bigger guys. Now, would I want to get something and start hosting it now? Not necessarily, because at that point, if I do a hosting service, it's going to be more of a long-term thing. Am I going to have the K7, the KA3, even this KS5? Am I going to be mining on them beyond this point? No. So for me, that's not an option for my current set of ASICs. And that's why if I get anything, it's going to be something with the mind frame of it being long-term, right? So that's why script ASICs, ETC ETH hash ASICs, something that I feel is going to be profitable beyond this bull market, which a lot of these alts probably not going to be the case. I'm not going to have a whole lot of confidence that a K7 will be profitable, KA3, even the KS5, even like the lithium ASICs beyond this cycle. Okay, what I think has a chance, some of the ETH hash ASICs, script, maybe some of the extremely efficient Bitcoin ASICs, that would be about it, right? I don't necessarily have a ton of confidence with the others. So even the reason I'm saying it's going to affect it short term is, again, now 100% efficiency is going to be extremely important. Okay, so that's definitely where the focus is going to be. And I may buy something now here when I profit take sometime throughout this year, or I might just wait and do a repeat of the previous plan we had for this previous bear market, right? Which did work out extremely well. Okay, so it definitely is changing things for me. It's making me look at things differently. Now, efficiency is definitely going to be a priority, because ideally I'd much rather have these things at home, right? To me, ASIC hosting would be more of a last resort, just for me personally. But again, I wouldn't necessarily feel confident even buying an L9 right now and thinking that, okay, that's definitely going to be the most efficient unit for the next 2-3 years. Hopefully it is, and out of all of the units that are out now, all of the algorithms, that would probably be my bet. So if I do get anything, it would probably be that, right? And realistically, I probably would get it now and even just have that one hosted, right? So it's hard to say exactly. It's hard to really think of anything that far ahead of time. But again, if I am planning to buy anything, it's with that mindset, right? It's going to be, efficiency is important. I want to get none of these non-efficient things unless the plan is going to be to mine on it and flip it within these next 6 months, right? Which there is still that possibility, but I'm not necessarily looking at doing that at this point in the market. Okay, so another priority is going to be like other things we've mentioned, these dpin items. As anything comes up that looks like it's going to be lucrative, that looks like it can pay itself off within this bull market, it's probably going to be I wouldn't say insta buy, but definitely something to look at. Okay. But overall, if any of you guys are in the Tampa area, if you have Tico, make sure you take a good look at your bill. Again, mine was a little bit different because it was a double whammy, because they got rid of my previous rate and included this recent price hike, so it went up pretty massively, right? So if you guys are in this area, make sure you do look at your bill, because this is going to be the first one with that hike. And they are gonna, looks like, again, if you guys are specific to this area, looks like March we may get another one. So something to be aware of. Hopefully with this incoming administration, or I could just say Trump now, again, according to him, that would be a priority. We'll see if it affects us locally or not. Again, a lot of these increases are specific to our area, just because of the recent devastation with the hurricanes and what it did to the grid. So a lot of it is going to be them just recouping those costs, all right? So Depends on what's going on, depends on your area, but that's a big part of the reason why us down here in the south, specifically in the Florida area, are going to get hit with these increased fees, right? So definitely going to change things, definitely have to go. That's what's going to be today's goal now after this video, is to go shuffle things around, right? So definitely going to prioritize certain ones, put other ones, getting them ready to get cleaned up, probably gonna get them ready to start getting ready to sell, right? But definitely game changer, guys. Actually, also want to mention this. Any of you guys, especially in the US, put your electric rate in the chat. Just kind of curious, because I hear different things all over the place as to what is the most common, what isn't the most common. Like, are people still low? I know some of you guys are freaking 6-7 cent kilowatt hour residential, which is crazy, but I've heard different things as to what as far as the average is. I think most people are saying it's 17, which even 14 seems extremely high. But let me know in the comments, guys. Keep us updated that way, kind of just to get an idea, right? And that way maybe when we do our profitability videos, we'll kind of update that, because initially I was using just my rate, which was 10 cents. But we're going to have to start looking at it a little bit differently, because again, even just a few cents a kilowatt hour, massive, massive difference, right? So let me know in the comments, guys. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.